Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are taking a seriously fascinating, structured tour inside the ultimate biological assembly line, the human body. We're going to be breaking down an incredibly detailed lecture by Dr. Jude Adege on human gametogenesis. In plain terms, we're looking at exactly how our bodies manufacture eggs and sperm, literally from the cellular level up. Okay, let's dive into this.
Just so you know exactly where we're headed, here is our roadmap for today's factory tour. We'll kick things off with the blueprint of gametogenesis. Then we walk into Factory A for oogenesis, creating the egg. Next up is Factory B for spermatogenesis, producing sperm cells. And finally, we'll look at the real-world factors that impact human fertility. Let's get going.
Starting off with Section 1, the blueprint of gametogenesis. Because, every well-run factory absolutely needs a solid management structure and a clear set of blueprints before any actual production can begin.
Let's get our core definition out of the gate right away so no one is left behind on the terminology. Gametogenesis is simply the overarching biological process by which our female and male gametes, specifically oocytes and sperm, are produced. It's a whole complex series of cell division and differentiation.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly who gives the orders to start that production. The endocrine chain of command operates exactly like a corporate top-down management structure. You've got the hypothalamus sitting at the very top, essentially acting as the CEO. It sends its chemical directives down to middle management, the pituitary gland. The pituitary then relays those orders all the way down the line to the actual manufacturing floors, the ovaries in females and the testes in males. This hormonal pathway, it controls the whole shebang.
That brings us to Section 2, oogenesis, creating the egg. We're stepping into Factory A, the female reproductive system, so get ready for a pretty incredible chronological journey. Now, if you haven't studied this before, prepare for a wait what moment. The production of female gametes doesn't start at puberty. It actually begins in utero. Yeah, a developing female fetus is already manufacturing the foundation of her future eggs before she is even born. Then the whole process hits this massive pause button, and it only kicks into its second phase years later when puberty begins. And amazingly, it only fully completes if fertilization occurs. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is exactly where these miraculous biological pauses happen. During fetal development, primordial germ cells divide by mitosis into oogonia, and then into primary oocytes. Those primary oocytes start their first meiotic division, but then bam! They are arrested in prophase 1. They literally freeze in time until puberty. Once puberty hits, stimulated by FSH, that first meiotic division finishes, giving us a secondary oocyte and a polar body. But then it hits another pause button. It stops at the metaphase of meiosis II, just waiting for ovulation. That final meiosis II division, it actually only completes if the egg is successfully fertilized by a sperm. Honestly, it's a staggering feat of biological timing.
All right, let's pivot to Section 3, spermatogenesis. We're leaving the ovaries and checking out Factory B, the male reproductive system, and this one operates on a totally different continuous schedule.
Unlike oogenesis, which spans decades and relies on those crazy biological pauses, spermatogenesis only starts at puberty, and once it does, it runs continuously. 70 to 90, that's the number of days it takes to produce sperm cells from start to finish. It's just a fantastic contrast to the decades-long timeline we just saw for females. Tracing the path from start to finish, this is all happening in the Sertoli cells within the seminiferous tubules of the testes. Starting at puberty, we've got diploid spermatogonial stem cells carrying 46 chromosomes. Through mitosis, differentiation, and then 2 rapid rounds of meiotic division, these cells are systematically halved. They go from primary spermatocytes down to secondary spermatocytes with just 23 chromosomes, and finally to spermatids. The end goal here is just constant factory output of haploid sperm cells, carrying exactly half the genetic material needed to create human life. Let's move to and see how this builds into the final product. Those spermatids we just mentioned, they aren't quite ready for prime time yet. They have to undergo a finishing stage called spermiogenesis. This is the physical transformation into that highly specialized, recognizable tadpole shape. It involves 4 key changes. First, the formation of the acrosome at the head. Second, the condensation of the nucleus. Third, building out the neck, midpiece, and tail for mobility. And finally, shedding most of the unnecessary cytoplasm. Once that's all done, boom, you have fully formed spermatozoa. Which brings us to our 4th and final section, what impacts human fertility? Because as amazing as these factories are, they don't exist in a vacuum.
we're shifting gears to some direct news you can use regarding environmental hazards.
Let's look at the hazards affecting oogenesis first. Because the female timeline is so incredibly long, it's vulnerable across two massive windows. During fetal development in utero, those primary oocytes can be damaged by genetics, toxic agents, radiation, or severe dietary deficiencies. Then, extrauterine, meaning pre- and post-puberty, the vulnerabilities shift. Now we're talking about the impact of age, lifestyle factors like smoking, excessive alcohol, obesity, and even medical interventions like chemotherapy or inflammatory conditions.
And what about the guys? Just because spermatogenesis is continuous definitely doesn't mean it's invincible. In fact, it is highly sensitive. High temperature and heat are major disruptors, along with physical issues like trauma or undescended testes. Then you've got environmental exposures, radiation from mobile phones and laptops, toxic substances like lead, and various infections. And lifestyle plays a massive role here too. Anabolic steroids, smoking, and alcohol abuse all actively disrupt this 70 to 90-day cycle. So the crucial point is that male fertility vulnerabilities are tied intimately to your everyday habits.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We've seen the blueprints, we've walked through the complex timelines of both female and male gametogenesis, and we've seen how fragile these systems can actually be. The biology is awe-inspiring, absolutely, but it's deeply intertwined with how we live. So I'll leave you with this question to reflect on. How are your everyday lifestyle choices shaping your own biological factories? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.